tradition and commandment. The air was tense as a group of Pharisees and scribes approached Jesus, their robes flowing as they stepped purposefully toward him. They had traveled all the way from Jerusalem, their intention clear: to challenge him and discredit his teachings. They waited until they were close enough, their voices sharp as they posed their accusation. "Why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders?" one of them demanded, his tone accusatory. "For they do not wash their hands when they eat bread." Their words carried the weight of tradition, a custom that was sacred in their eyes and central to their understanding of purity. Jesus, calm and unwavering, turned to them. His response was not defensive but piercing, cutting straight to the heart of the matter. "Why do you yourselves transgress the commandment of God for the sake of your tradition?" His voice was steady, but the question was like a blade, exposing their hypocrisy. "For God said," he continued, "honor your father and mother, and he who speaks evil of father or mother is to be put to death." The crowd that had gathered to witness the exchange listened closely, their eyes shifting between Jesus and the Pharisees. They could feel the tension mounting with every word. "But you say," Jesus pressed on, "whoever says to his father or mother, 'Whatever I have that would help you has been given to God,' he is not to honor his father or his mother." The Pharisees stiffened, their discomfort visible. Jesus' words revealed how they had twisted the law, using it to shield their own selfishness while invalidating the very commandment of God. "And by this you invalidated the word of God for the sake of your tradition." His eyes, filled with both sorrow and righteous anger, fixed on them as he delivered his next words. "You hypocrites," he said, the force of his truth undeniable. "Rightly did Isaiah prophesy of you. This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far away from me. But in vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the precepts of men." The Pharisees shifted uneasily, but Jesus was not finished. He turned to the crowd that had gathered, raising his voice so that all could hear. "Hear and understand," he said, his tone inviting them to reflect deeply on his words. "It is not what enters into the mouth that defile the man, but what proceeds out of the mouth, this defile the man." The crowd murmured among themselves, the meaning of his statement stirring in their hearts. The focus was not on outward rituals, but on the condition of the heart, a truth that resonated with some and challenged others. Later, away from the crowd, the disciples approached Jesus, their concern evident. "Do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this statement?" one of them asked, their voices low as if fearing the Pharisees might still be within earshot. Jesus turned to them, his expression resolute. "Every plant which my heavenly Father did not plant shall be uprooted," he said, his words carrying both a warning and a promise. The Pharisees' teachings, rooted not in God's truth, but in human traditions, would not stand. They would be exposed for what they were. "Let them alone," he said, a note of finality in his voice. "They are blind guides of the blind. And if a blind man guides a blind man, both will fall into a pit." His words left the disciples with much to ponder, a vivid reminder of the danger of following those who could not see the truth. The exchange lingered in the minds of all who had witnessed it. Jesus' boldness in confronting the Pharisees and his focus on the heart over outward rituals revealed the depth of his wisdom and authority. The truth he spoke was not always comfortable, but it was always liberating for those willing to receive it. The heart of man. The disciples were gathered close to Jesus, their faces filled with curiosity and a touch of uncertainty. They had heard his earlier words to the crowd and the Pharisees, but the meaning of the parable about defilement still puzzled them. Peter, ever eager to seek clarity, spoke up on behalf of the group. "Explain the parable to us," he asked, his voice carrying both respect and a longing to understand. Jesus turned to him, his expression a mix of patience and gentle reproach. Are you still lacking in understanding also? He asked, his tone not harsh, but urging them to think more deeply. He looked around at the rest of the disciples, ensuring they too were listening. Do you not understand? Jesus began to explain that everything that goes into the mouth passes into the stomach and is eliminated. He gestured, using the simple logic of the physical process they all knew well. What enters the body, he explained, does not linger in the heart or soul. It simply passes through. The disciples nodded slowly, the first layer of meaning beginning to settle in their minds. But Jesus wasn't finished. His tone grew more serious as he turned to the deeper truth. But the things that proceed out of the mouth, he continued, come from the heart, and those defile the man. The weight of his words sank in. The disciples now envisioned the heart as the wellspring of a person's actions and words, the source from which all expressions flowed. Jesus painted the picture clearly. For out of the heart, he said, come evil thoughts, murderers, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, slanders. He paused for a moment, letting the gravity of the list settle into their minds. Each word was a reminder of the destructive power of sin, not as an external stain, but as something rooted deeply within. The disciples thought of their own hearts, their own struggles, as the realization grew. What emerged from within held far greater weight than outward rituals or appearances. These, Jesus concluded, his voice firm yet compassionate, are the things which defile the man. But to eat with unwashed hands does not defile the man. The disciples exchanged glances, understanding dawning on their faces. Jesus was challenging not just the traditions of the Pharisees, but a mindset, one that placed too much emphasis on outward acts while ignoring the inner condition of the heart. In the quiet that followed, the disciples felt a call to reflection, to examine not just what they did, but who they were within. For some, the realization was humbling, even convicting. Yet in Jesus' words, they also sensed hope, a reminder that their transformation began not with rituals, but with the renewing of their hearts. The scene lingered in their memories, the moment when Jesus revealed what truly mattered in the eyes of God. His words were not just for them, but for all who would hear, a timeless call to cultivate hearts of purity, love, and truth. The Syrophoenician woman. The air was still as Jesus entered the region of Tyre and Sidon, seeking quiet in a place far from the crowds that so often followed him. But even here, his presence did not go unnoticed. From the shadows of this foreign land, a Canaanite woman emerged, her voice breaking through the calm. She cried out with desperation, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David, my daughter is cruelly demon-possessed." Her words carried the weight of anguish only a mother could bear. Yet Jesus, walking steadily ahead, did not answer her. The silence hung heavy in the air, but the woman did not give up. Her pleas grew louder, more urgent, as she followed him and his disciples. The disciples, clearly uncomfortable with the scene, turned to Jesus and said, "Send her away, because she keeps shouting at us." Their voices were edged with impatience, their focus on their own peace rather than her pain. Finally, Jesus broke his silence. Turning to the woman, his words were measured, seemingly distant. "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel," he said. His statement seemed to place a boundary between them, a line she was not meant to cross. But the woman, undeterred, fell to her knees before him. Her voice broke with raw emotion as she pleaded, "Lord, help me." Her posture spoke of both desperation and faith, her persistence rooted in a belief that he alone could bring healing to her child. Jesus looked at her, and his response, though challenging, was layered with purpose. "It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs," he said. The words were jarring, perhaps testing the depth of her faith, the strength of her resolve. But the woman's answer came swiftly, her humility and wisdom shining through. "Yes, Lord," she replied, "but even the dogs feed on the crumbs which fall from their master's table." Her words were like a spark of light, bold, humble, and filled with unshakable belief. She acknowledged her position as an outsider, but clung to the truth that even the smallest measure of his power could bring about the miracle she sought. Jesus' expression softened, his gaze filled with both admiration and compassion. "Oh, woman," he said, his voice warm and full of affirmation, "your faith is great. It shall be done for you as you wish." In that very moment, her daughter was healed, the tormenting presence vanquished, and peace restored. The woman's faith, relentless and unwavering, had crossed barriers of culture, silence, and challenge to reach the heart of the one she sought. Her story became a testament to the truth that faith knows no boundaries, and that the mercy of the kingdom extends far beyond what many could imagine. Those who witnessed it felt the gravity of her persistence, the beauty of her humility, and the power of her belief. And as Jesus continued his journey, the echoes of her faith lingered, a reminder to all who followed him that the kingdom of heaven was not confined to lines drawn by men, but was open to the hearts of all who dared to believe. Healing crowds. The soft sound of waves lapping against the shore followed Jesus as he walked along the Sea of Galilee. The sun bathed the water in golden light, and the breeze carried with it a sense of peace. After a while, he ascended a nearby hill, finding a quiet place to sit. From there, he overlooked the waters below, his face calm, his thoughts deep. But the tranquility of the moment would soon give way to the hum of approaching voices. From the nearby towns and villages, they came, men, women, children, all carrying with them their hopes, their burdens, and their loved ones in need of healing. Some leaned on walking sticks, others were carried on makeshift stretchers, while still others were led by the hand, their blindness keeping them from seeing where they were going. Word had spread of the teacher, the healer, the one who had performed wonders, and they came seeking the mercy only he could provide. One by one, they laid their sick and broken at his feet. The lame struggled forward, each step painful. The mute pointed to their mouths in silent plea. The crippled looked up from where they were placed, their limbs twisted with afflictions. Parents knelt, cradling children who were weak and unwell. And the blind reached out, sensing the presence of someone who could restore what they had lost. Jesus looked upon them all, and his heart filled with compassion. He stood, stepping into the sea of human need, and began to heal. He touched the lame, their legs straightening beneath them as they stood tall and walked for the first time in years, or ever. He turned to the mute, and with a single touch, their voices rang out in cries of amazement and laughter. The crippled were made whole, their twisted limbs restored to perfect strength. The blind opened their eyes, their faces lighting up as they saw the world, and the one who had brought them sight. The hill became a place of marvel and joy, the cries of pain replaced by shouts of astonishment and gratitude. The crowd couldn't hold back their amazement as they watched the impossible unfold before their very eyes. Families embraced, weeping tears of relief and joy, while others fell to their knees, overcome by the enormity of what they were witnessing. And through it all, their hearts turned upward. They glorified the God of Israel, their praises rising like incense to the heavens. For they knew that the power displayed before them was not of man, but of God himself. As the evening descended and the crowd lingered, their lives forever changed. The hill seemed to glow not just with the light of the setting sun, but with the presence of something holy. Jesus remained among them, the source of their healing, their hope, and their praise. And in that moment, the kingdom of heaven felt closer than ever, as though the veil between heaven and earth had been lifted, revealing the infinite mercy of God. 4,000 fed. The sun was dipping lower into the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, as Jesus sat with his disciples on the rocky hillside overlooking the Sea of Galilee. The atmosphere, though serene, was marked by the quiet hum of thousands of people who had gathered around him. For 3 days, these men, women, and children had lingered, captivated by his teachings and awestruck by his miracles. But now hunger gnawed at them, their faces weary from the long stay in the wilderness. Jesus, his heart moved with compassion, called his disciples to him. "I feel compassion for the people," he said, his voice tinged with concern. "They have remained with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat, and I do not want to send them away hungry, for they might faint on the way." The disciples exchanged uneasy glances, their brows furrowing. They knew the size of the crowd, 4,000 men, not counting the women and children. The logistics seemed impossible. One of them voiced the shared doubt. "Where would we get so many loaves in this desolate place to satisfy such a large crowd?" Jesus, calm and unwavering, asked them, "How many loaves do you have?" Counting their provisions, they responded, 7, and a few small fish." The disciples held up their meager offering, uncertainty clouding their expressions. How could such a small amount possibly be enough? Without hesitation, Jesus instructed them to have the people sit down on the ground. The crowd, murmuring with curiosity, slowly settled into groups across the grassy hillside, the setting sun casting long shadows over them. As the disciples moved among them, organizing the gathering, Jesus took the 7 loaves and the fish into his hands. He lifted his face toward heaven, his expression serene, and gave thanks to the Father. The simple prayer carried on the breeze, touching the hearts of those nearby. Then, breaking the loaves, Jesus handed the pieces to his disciples. They, in turn, began distributing the food to the people. At first, they moved tentatively, unsure of how far the provisions would go. But as they reached into their baskets, more food seemed to appear, as though the supply was endless. The crowd, initially hesitant, soon began to eat. Mothers fed their children, friends shared with one another, and laughter broke out as the realization spread. There was enough for everyone. The disciples, marveling at the miracle unfolding in their very hands, continued to pass out bread and fish until every person had their fill. By the time the meal was over, the once hungry crowd was satisfied, their energy renewed. The disciples moved through the crowd again, this time gathering the remnants of the meal. They filled 7 large baskets with the broken pieces that were left over, a testament to the abundance of the miracle. As the twilight deepened, Jesus dismissed the crowd, their gratitude evident in their expressions and murmurs of praise. They left the hillside with hearts full, not just from the food but from the experience of witnessing the love and power of the one who had provided for them. Jesus, seeing the disciples' awe and reflection, quietly stepped into a boat to cross to the region of Montedan. The sea, calm and reflective in the dim light of dusk, carried him toward his next destination. The miracle he had performed lingered in the minds of all who had been there, a powerful reminder that even the smallest offering, placed in his hands, could be transformed into an overflowing blessing. The kingdom of heaven, once again, had been revealed in bread and fish, compassion and abundance.